Well, the Army private accused of leaking hundreds of thousands of secret military documents appeared in court this morning. Prosecutors today said Bradley Manning aided al-Qaeda by leaking the documents to the whistleblowing website WikiLeaks. Manning faces a slew of charges, including aiding the enemy, but that enemy was not named until today's hearing. Now, as court sessions are underway, some doubt the alleged whistleblower stands a chance at a fair trial, and some say he was already punished and tortured while he was locked up for over a year, awaiting his court date. So, in such a high-profile government case, is a fair trial in a military court even possible for Manning? We'll discuss this and more. I'm joined now by Jack Pesavento, press liaison for the Bradley Manning Support Network. Welcome to the show, Zach. So, your reaction to what the prosecution said today, that Bradley Manning aided the terrorist group al-Qaeda by releasing those documents. That's a very serious allegation there.
Well, it's one more absurd allegation in a long train of absurdities that have gone on for over 2 years now. As you mentioned, it has taken us about 2 years to figure out who exactly they meant by the enemy. We weren't sure if they meant that WikiLeaks was the enemy or the American people is the enemy. So, you know, it's an absurd allegation. Clearly, Bradley Manning was motivated out of a commitment to his country. I mean, when we look at some of the evidence that the prosecution has tried to submit, we can read Bradley Manning's alleged words saying that he wants people to know the truth, and that if the public is not informed about what their government is doing, then they're just not able to hold their leaders accountable.
What do you think about this specific allegation that al-Qaeda, he was helping al-Qaeda by releasing these documents?
Well, you know, they can make these claims and go on with this fear-mongering as they have been as much as they want, but they're entirely baseless. And we know that they're baseless because we know for a fact that the government conducted a number of internal impact assessments that found that the WikiLeaks materials do not pose any threat to our national security, that our troops were never put in harm's way. Today in court, we spent the greater majority of the day with the defense team really asking or pleading with the prosecution to produce these impact assessments. And they've gone on again repeatedly claiming that they've offered a number of actually contradicting allegations, but explanations, but today saying that basically because it was classified, we can't even look at it, we can't even answer that question and give it back to you. So Coombs was really making the point today, Bradley's attorney, saying that it appears, you know, by any clear assessment of the situation, that the prosecution is basically sort of deliberately misunderstanding what it means to produce this evidence, and so that's why they went ahead and filed a motion today to dismiss all charges with prejudice, because it appears that basically that the administration is sort of deliberately not following the rules in this case.
Now, another interesting thing in this case, recently a United Nations official investigating this case ruled that the U.S. government imposed cruel, inhumane treatment against Manning. So do you think that he's already being punished before even being found guilty?
Well, you know, it reminds me of growing up in school, going to civics class. You know, you learn these basic concepts that, you know, trial tends to precede punishment, you know, that these are basic foundational concepts of you know, Western law and injustice, and that's been completely thrown out the window in this case. And so, you know, it was important and very significant now that that the United Nations officials are formally finding that the Obama administration has subjected Bradley Manning to cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment, and that's a clear violation of his 8th Amendment rights. That's a clear violation of Articles 1 and 16 of the UN Convention Against Torture. That's a treaty that has been ratified by Congress in accordance with the Constitution. And these really aren't optional standards. These are basic rules of the road that the administration needs to play by. And if they're not able to do that, then they're not qualified to govern.
Now, there's been some talk that there is this effort to control the media in this trial, what facts are reported to the public, and there's been some accusations that the media hasn't really had access to some of these hearings, or, you know, in comparison to some other less high-profile cases. What, from your perspective, would you say that it's hard for the media to accurately report on this case?
Well, you know, the irony certainly isn't lost on us that we're sitting here in the middle of Sunshine Week. We're supposed to be celebrating government openness and transparency, and instead we have, you know, yet another hearing of another, you know, retaliatory prosecution of a whistleblower. Just this week, the Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press submitted a letter to the Pentagon that was signed by over 46 mainstream media organizations saying that they have not had access to basic materials in this case. We're talking about things like a court docket to simply explain what's being discussed in court, or having access to basic transcripts, in addition to the other documents and materials they'd like to see. And they set up an interesting comparison in this complaint, where basically we're now at a standard where we're at a lower standard, or sort of more secrecy essentially, than what has been allowed even at military tribunals at Guantanamo Bay. And so this is really bizarre that, you know, standards that we think, you know, were set for accused terrorists overseas, you know, now are being applied to our own citizens, to a U.S. soldier here on American soil, and that's really alarming.
So you're saying that Bradley Manning is being treated like a terrorist in some ways?
Worse than one.
Worse than one. And you think that there is an effort to conceal these documents?
Well, it's obvious. I mean, it's not simply, you know, activists we're talking about here. These are mainstream, you know, organizations and outlets saying that we're not getting the basic access that we ought to have here, and it's really stifling free debate and a free press. I mean, ultimately, we need to look back at the Constitution.
Zach, thank you so much. Sorry to cut you off. We're running out of time here, but thank you very much for keeping us updated, and we will, of course, continue to keep our viewers updated on this case. That was Zach Paisavento, press liaison for the Bradley Manning Support Network.